welcome to the 10th annual IoT Security Foundation conference. And because it's the 10th annual conference, we felt it was apt to have the theme of past, present and future. Before, when we talk about the past, present and future, you'll be pleased to know, I think, that we won't dwell too much on the past, but we need to understand the past to help us understand what the future might hold. So this is me. Hopefully you all know me by now. I'm John Moore. I'm the Managing Director of the IoT Security Foundation. I'm also a co-founder, but I also wear a different hat too, and that's the COO of an organization called TechWorks. TechWorks is the legal entity behind IoTSF and a number of other technology-related communities that cover semiconductor design, manufacturing, power electronics, embedded systems, and also automotive, as well as cybersecurity. And as I'll talk a little bit as I get through my slides, we are also venturing more into AI. So here we are. Where do we start? Well, let's start at the origin. 9 years, 1 month ago today, on September the 23rd, 2015, we launched the IoT Security Foundation. And some of the astute may be thinking, well, if you're just over 9 years old, how can this be the 10th annual conference? Well, it's a very simple answer to that, and the engineers will know it, is we started at 0, and this is year 9, so we're at the 10th conference. There's a picture of me. I think you could, it's not a very good picture, but there I am at the Digital Catapult back on that day when we launched. And when we launched, we were looking at what we were going to do to address this rather wicked challenge of IoT cybersecurity. And where we started from, we looked at some fundamental principles, or what we've come to know as our founding values. And our founding values, which we think are quite immutable, we review them every year and they haven't changed, they stand firm, and that is a security-first mindset. Sometimes that may get translated into something like security by design, but we think the mindset is really important. The second point is recognizing that context is king. Fitness of purpose. Whilst we look at many common controls, the way you use those controls will vary across the application. And of course, it's not just the application, it's also the economics that you're looking at too, and also the threat landscape. And for me, as I've said many times, an expired embedded systems engineer when the world was largely not connected, the big eye-opener for me back in 2015 was this part called resilience, because you just have to accept that you are vulnerable and it's likely you will get hacked. And I think that's a game changer. It certainly changes the mindset. So resilience through operating life, not just operating life, but also end of life too. And as I say, those are our what I see as immutable founding values. This is a diagram that we've used quite a lot over the years, and this is from our friends at Beecham Research, who I think are here today. I think Robin and Anna are going to be around if they're not already here. I'm expecting them. But where we started, we chose to focus on consumer to start with, because that was the most acute area with the most acute problems. But of course, as we've moved forward, we do significantly more than just consumer. In fact, not a lot of consumer these days, although it's not something that we can ignore. And I think this diagram, which we refer to as the Beecham butterfly diagram, just illustrates the domain that we operate across. And you can see all of those lines and those segments there, those interfaces, that shows where we need to insert security controls across all of those domains. So we said, okay, with this expanding world of IoT, how are we going to address all those issues? And for us, as a non-profit association, it was really about trying to create what we term the super blue team, a collaborative approach, as many people as we can get involved to address this wicked challenge of IoT security. So that's kind of the past. I kind of want to move very quickly into the present and the near present with some just key updates. Part of my role here is to get you all warmed up for for the main acts that are coming. So I just wanted to reiterate some of the updates that we've got for this year. And the first thing I would like to say is that we added 2 new Executive Steering Board members this year. We're delighted to have Peter Davies and Dr. Anna Maria Mandalari join the board. We had our 50th meeting of the Executive Steering Board just in September, and the subject of that was really about the strategy and going forwards. I'd also like to pay tribute to Trevor Hall, who sat down here at the front, who was the chair of the Assurance Framework Working Group for many years. He handed the baton over to Ian Pearson, who we'll hear from later in the proceedings. I'd also like to announce, because we haven't made it public yet, but Florian Lukavsky is also taking on the role of vice chair of our Regulatory Watch Working Group. And I'd also like to just recognise Mo Adu for being the CISO, the chair of the CISO Forum. Again, within the Smart Built Working Group, we felt there was a kind of a core sector of professionals that we wanted to focus some of our attention on, and Mo is chairing that group. When I was here last year, I was delighted to announce 2 new chapters, 2 new international chapters for IoTSF, being Bangalore and Houston. I'm delighted to say that we've got 2 more chapters this year with Amsterdam and Chennai. So welcome, and especially if you're watching on the live stream, we're delighted that you could beam in remotely. When we looked at chapters, we didn't want to put too many rules around what makes a chapter. We wanted to keep the establishment of chapters very low, because our purpose is really about proliferating security best practice. So we put very few rules in place, the minimum that we could allow. And what's been very interesting for me to see how some of the chapters have started and starting to mature is the difference across the world and the approach. So some prefer a kind of a beer and pizza type meetup. Some are looking at much more formal programs and conferencing. But suffice to say, if there's anybody here who has travelled to the UK who fancies setting up a chapter, we would certainly encourage you to do that. Or if there's anybody watching on the live stream, it's quite a simple process. We've tried to keep the bureaucracy low and the cost too. What we want to do is maximise the networking and the proliferation of good security practice. Now, I had a bit of fun last year and said, I want to tell you about a few things I've noticed, and I'm going to call it It's the Thing. What did I say last year? It's the Thing. So, what made the list last year was memory safety. Crikey, I can't read that. Excuse me a moment. I'm going to have to get my specs out. Memory safety. We were also looking at the emergence and the gain in zero trust practices and zero trust environments. Post-quantum technologies were making a big entrance, and that continues. And indeed, we've got people on the agenda today. Certainly, Quantum Dice is going to do a talk later about what they're doing with quantum technology. Continuous assurance. We reckon this is something that IoTSF has been championing for quite some time, because we recognise the importance of certifications, but we think they're fairly limited. And if you're looking at IoT and resilience, well, the nature of the game changes. It really is about continuous assurance through operating life. So that's something that permeates its way through pretty much everything we do, not just from today, but the projects that we look at going on into the future. And we also thought SBOMs. It's a thing, and we stand by that. In fact, the more we look at the utility of SBOMs, they are substantially more than just an ingredients list. We think with good design and practice, you can operationalize SBOMs. And of course, AI. You can't ignore AI. AI is coming at us whether we like it or not. And what we spoke about, AI was a focus for us last year at this conference, but as I mentioned earlier, across our sibling communities at TechWorks, we were trying to figure out how we best bring in AI across the piece, because we didn't want to just drop it in the silos. So earlier this year, after some preparatory work in terms of webinars and workshops, we launched what we call TechWorks AI, and IoT Security Foundation is part of that, as well as our other communities in the automotive space and the semiconductor space too. And I'm delighted that we brought in a new member of staff. Gareth is here somewhere. I can't quite see, but if there's a picture of him, if you recognise him, say hello to him. He's got a stand in the exhibition area. And of course, when we looked at what we could do in AI, you'll know it's quite there's an awful lot of hype. There's a lot of discussion. Some of it is just almost philosophical, let's put it that way. But we looked at what we could do tangibly. And so we came out of the blocks on a story of engineering trustworthy AI, because that's fundamentally where our communities are. And we've got a project which extends the utility of SBOMs into AI, and we call that the Trusted AI Bill of Materials project. And again, you'll get to hear about some of those things today. Indeed, in the next session, session 2, there'll be some talks on that. But just go back to the memory safety, it's a thing. I'm very pleased to say that the awareness of memory safety is growing. I don't think it's as widely known yet as we'd like it to be. If this is the first time that you've heard about it, we have a session later in the day which is looking at the pernicious challenge of memory safety. But what's really interesting also is that solutions are coming, beyond the software languages. There are hardware solutions coming to market too. And to kind of recognise that, a new group, the Cherry Alliance, has been formed, and we've got a representation from the Cherry Alliance that I'm not sure it's been formally announced yet, although the website is up, and I do know there is a launch event that's happening on November the 12th for the Cherry Alliance, and I'm pleased to say that TechWorks is fully behind that, and we're going to engage with that in our work going forwards. And to state the obvious for many, what a year for regulation. PSTI finally hit the road, it's enacted, it's in force now. And we've also just had the Cyber Resilience Act been adopted by the European Council. And so I think it's very clear to see the direction of travel there. PSTI being what I would consider a very simple starting point. The CRA is raising a few more eyebrows, and it's something that we discuss quite often in our working groups. I think it's also fair to say that although there's only 3 simple controls with the PSTI, it has caused some issues with industry, and we've been having a conversation with our members and also government as to what we think the issues are. The government, the UK government, will do an assessment of PSTI. We're going to help with that. You can get involved in giving some feedback to that, and if you want to know how to do that, then I suggest you drop into the regulation session this afternoon, where staff who are representing that assessment will be there. It's also this time of year where we publish our kind of State of the Nation Vulnerability Disclosure Policy report. This is a report which is put together by the good people at Copper Horse. We've been doing this with them for now, this will be the 7th publication. And for me, what it really shows is a barometer on what's going on in the industry. It's one small thing, but it's something that we can detect, and we can detect it from doing some desk-based research in the consumer space. But recently, that's extended into what the report calls enterprise. And enterprise, I think, in this context, is equipment that you can buy for an office from the retail chain. And I've read the report. It is in production at the moment, so look out for it. We will publish it soon. I'm pleased to say that there has been progress. When we first looked at this, there were less than 10% of companies that had a vulnerability disclosure policy. The numbers are going up, but I think it's fair to say the progress has been pretty glacial. We were expecting the dial to move quite significantly this year. Without revealing any spoilers, I would say there is progress, but is it good enough? Personally, I think it needs to do better. The report itself also focuses on what's going on in retail. And for me, that was an interesting update. So to compare what's going on with John Lewis or Amazon, with Walmart, and a few other suppliers throughout Europe and the US that I'm not familiar with, but to look at the state of the products that they're listing and now subject to, or will be subject to regulation, certainly here in the UK. So I commend that report to you. We'll announce it, we'll send it out, or give you notice for those who want to read it. I would recommend reading it. You can read it over a cup of coffee. It's, not only does it give you the numbers, it gives a commentary as to the development of practice in vulnerability disclosure too. Now, this is perhaps the biggest announcement, in my view, that we're making today. Many of you will be familiar with the IoT Security Assurance Framework. It is a crown jewel of the IoT Security Foundation, and I know it's globally acclaimed. Everybody I speak to thinks that the quality of it is second to none, and of course I agree with that. Because not only is it written by security professionals, it's people who make products and who are at the sharp end of delivering security. Now, we've been delivering that via a PDF, a downloadable PDF, and this is always our number one download. Every month I look at it, it averages about 100 a month downloads. Even now, since it's been published in, I think that was release 3 was 2021, still getting lots of downloads every month. But we've been asking ourselves some challenging questions. And what we're saying is, how do we evolve that? Is it fit for where we are now, and is it fit for where we go forward? How can we maintain it collaboratively? How do we update it, and how do we map it to requirements that are evolving, not just in the regulatory space, but also certification schemes that we see evolving? So what we're trying to do, what we're aiming for its users, is give a lifecycle tool from developer auditing right the way through to the conformance teams. And of course, our challenges are keeping it simple, make sure the cost is low, and what we're really aiming to do is when you do the auditing, you do it once. What we're trying to encompass in that too is guidance on the process that you need to follow, but we're also looking to add some better tooling. We want to make sure that the framework is agile and that it can be pointed in a number of destinations, so from regulation to applications, make it adaptable. We want to make it downstream interoperable because we very much see our position is not to compete with the labs or any certification schemes. In fact, we see ourselves as natural partners to those schemes, and what we're trying to do is make firms better ready to go into those labs, to go into those certification schemes. So we've said that the way we position ourselves is pre-standards, pre-compliance. We know that the world is constantly changing, but the foundations have to be absolutely firm. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I have colleagues who will talk about this in the panel session and later in the next session in this room. As I mentioned, Ian Pearson has taken over the chair role for the working group. We'll talk about the foundational changes that are coming to IoT security. So that's pretty much my quick update. I need to get moving because I'm acutely aware that we're 5 minutes behind timing, and I don't want to get us off to a bad start. But before I motor on, I just want to pause and just say thank you to these guys, because I know it's a cliche, but it's a truism. Without the support of these good people, none of us would be here today. So I want to say thank you to Sakama, who are a platinum sponsor. They sponsored last year. They've come back again. Thank you, Sakama. I also want to say a big thank you to Device Authority. They've been with us for quite a long time, so thank you very much, Device Authority, for being a platinum sponsor. And I will call out the gold sponsors too. So Keysight, Komodo, Siemens, Tropic Square. They've got stands up in the exhibition, so please drop by and have a chat with those good people. and also our partners too, and the bronze and silver sponsors. But once again, we could not do this without you guys. So please continue to support us, I hope, into the future. Right. So here's the agenda. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. This is what we call the plenary session. Everybody's here in the room. After this session, we break up into 3 tracks. One track will be here. There's the What's and What room, which is over to my left, your right, along the corridor that way on the ground floor. And the other track is in the Turing Theatre, which is on level 2. And of course, all of the networking is back in the Riverside, where you came in with those spectacular views over London. What else have we got to say about the agenda? Oh yeah, there was one more thing. I've kind of pointed to a few aspects on the agenda, but what we've really tried to do is have a kind of a full and rounded agenda which should appeal to many of the different professions that make up delivering security. I did want to give one special shout out to a session later in the day, which is a little bit different from what we usually do in terms of the best practices, the next practices that we do, and the kind of threat landscape, etc. And that's a session with Dr. Leonie Tanser, who is looking at technology abuse. So it's really a human-centric session. So if that is of interest to you, and I hope it is, you'll see a slightly different side view looking at the challenge of IoT security. Of course, this is the session that we're in now. This part of my stand is coming to an end, and I'm about to call up our first keynote. So we've got 2 keynotes, and then we've got a panel session with members of the IoT Executive Steering Board.